All right, we are on. We are live. Hello, hello. Welcome to another episode of The Pulse. This is what Wednesday, March 18th, 2026. Got a very good show coming up. How's things going in your world, Tavius?
Um, Going great personally in my world. In the world, things are interesting.
Very much so. Very much so. I mean, it's a lot of interesting is a great word to put it. I mean, the all the wars is popping off. Uh the way that they snub sinners at all the different awards, but we're not going to get into that. I mean, I was definitely I felt some type of way about sinners, and I also felt some type of way about completely unrelated to news and politics, by the way. But one battle after another, and the how that won awards and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not a cinema person, but whenever I don't think that movie was really all that. I don't know if you saw that movie or not, but it was a strange one. Did you see one battle after another?
I did not. I did not. But every time I watch a movie award show, I understand more and more why I am not a cinema guy. Um,
Hey, yeah,
I
I
don't.
would
I
I wouldn't
don't.
know.
I don't get the selection choice. Yeah. No. Shout out to Michael B. Jordan for what was that? Best actor.
I think so. Did they get? I don't
Yeah.
know. I didn't even pay attention to what they won, but I know they won some stuff. And then
Yeah.
shout out to Ryan Coogler putting on for the California accent. I love it. I love listening to that dude talk when he comes on. I'm just like, hey man, he's authentically him. That's one
Yeah.
thing is for sure. He's authentically him, and he's doing his thing. I love that.
For sure.
So on the show today, we're talking about the world collapsing, man. I don't know. We're talking about Trump saying that he's going to take over Cuba. We're talking about Iran, what's going on in the Middle East and with Israel and all the craziness that's happening there, and kind of filling you in on the latest with that. And also on a more positive note, we're talking about some of the workers. There's actually a lot of strikes going on right now, some pretty big strikes actually in the U.S. And it's not getting as much coverage as some of the other things, but there's a really big meatpacking strike going on right now. That's I think the largest in decades. And there's nursing strikes, teacher strikes, and stuff like that going on all across the country. So we'll talk about that. And yeah, hopefully fill you guys in on some of the latest news. So without further ado, let's jump into Cuba.
Let's do it.
Yeah, man. So Cuba right now, if those who don't know, Cuba's offline. The whole electrical grid in Cuba has fallen off, and it's really a manufactured humanitarian disaster, and it's a direct result of the US energy blockade that we have against them. And kind of like their quote unquote failed grid that people like to point to, of this failed grid and failed electrical grid of Cuba, with the quiet part about that being that the past 65 years of embargo and economic sanctions against Cuba has kind of prevented them from even really being able to uh, do anything with their grid or to improve upon this stuff. So let's actually put, which one is it? It's Artifact A on the screen really quick, so we can kind of get that headline going. So yeah, it's an island-wide blackout hits Cuba as it struggles with this deepening energy crisis. And so, as you may know, for decades, Venezuela has been kind of Cuba's lifeline, and it's given oil to the island, and it's kind of helped keep Cuba chugging along in the kind of like it's been snubbed from the rest of the world. But since everything has gone on, and we covered this in the last show, since everything's gone on with capturing and kidnapping Maduro, and the U.S. kind of cutting off the shipments and threatening to sanction any nation that's helping out with Venezuela or Cuba, including Mexico, that tries to do anything to sell fuel to Cuba, the Trump administration is basically effectively placed 11 million people kind of like back into the medieval times. They're running out of oil, they're running out of electricity, they're running out of humanitarian aid. Things are not functioning properly. Like they're not even having trash pickup, so it's trash all throughout the streets, and it's women, children, men, just innocent civilians out here with no power, no oil, and no seemingly help in sight. I'm curious to get your take on that. What do you think is gonna be made of this? And then we'll kind of get into Trump's comments about what's going on in Cuba.
I mean, that's a tough situation. I definitely can't imagine going that long without basic utilities or basic human services. Um, can't imagine what that's doing to the healthcare infrastructure. I imagine. I mean, in terms of finances, Cuba's never really been strong just because of the ongoing trade embargoes and things like that. But I mean, I imagine what little commerce was going on the island has just come to a complete standstill. So uh, it has to look very dystopian on the ground there, and my heart definitely goes out to the people of Cuba because I can't imagine going through anything like that.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think about just here in Georgia when we're out of power for even a little bit, we all know
Yeah,
how uncomfortable it is to be out of power for any amount of time. And then imagine that being, the entire island. And then also speaking of the oil and where they get their energy from. So actually, interestingly enough, since the start of this year, Cuba has only received two small vessels of oil because the U.S. has completely blocked, the Venezuelan supply and threatened all of the other sellers, potential sellers that would be able to help out with Cuba. And so I want to get into this video of Trump where he basically talks about and I quote, he says that I do believe I'll have the honor of taking Cuba, whether I free it or take it. I can basically do anything I want. And so, you know what? What's better than just having us hear the words from himself, or hearing the words from the man himself? So we'll play this video really quick, and then Tavius, I want to kind of get your reaction to this. So let's play that
My
video.
life, I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it. You want to know the truth? They're a very weakened nation right now. They were for a long time. Very violent leaders. Castro was a very violent leader. His brother's a very violent leader. Extremely violent. That's how they governed. They governed with violence. But a lot of people would like to go back.
Very violent leader, and he evoked the name of Castro. Tavius, I'm curious your response and your reaction to that video and saying that he can do anything he wants. He can do anything he wants with Cuba. What do you think about that?
yeah. Thoughts, comments, and concerns. He always starts off this bullshit with I'm hearing or people are telling me, and I promise no one's telling him this. It's just the voices in his head.
That's it.
I don't understand it. Calling it an honor to take over another country, another sovereign country. I don't know what makes you think that's an honor. It kind of just makes you a dictator. And calling Fidel Castro a very violent man when we're propping up one genocide
after another,
in
literally
Palestine.
bombing schools of little Iranian children, and he's talking about anyway. Yeah, it's just the
proxy war
hypocrisy.
in Ukraine.
Yeah, every it's like every accusation is an admission.
There's a long list. There's a
long list.
We could go on.
Super long list. And I mean, yeah, it really is. Every accusation is an admission. When it comes to this stuff, it's almost like, when you have a conversation with a child, or you're playing a game with a kid or something like that, and then they just make stuff up, and it's just anything that they're doing, they say that you're doing it. Like if you're playing a game with the kid and they say, oh, well, I'm magic and I get to do a magic move on you, and you're like, well, I'm magic too. And it's like, no, you can't be magic. This only works for me. It only works for me. I just make up the rules as I go. I just say things and go on the fly, and it's what I say goes, no matter what's real or what's not. But
it's the equivalent of playing rock, paper, scissors, and then somebody just doing a finger gun.
yeah, I win. I get you. I win. And so, I mean, I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous, but it's very serious. So I have a few stats here that I want to read out about really what's going on. So the national electrical grid in Cuba, complete collapse right now. I don't know if and when, this thing is going to come back up, but right now it's just complete collapse, blackout. And then, so as I mentioned earlier, the fuel deliveries that they've had this year is just 2 small tankers for the entire island. You're talking 11 million people. And we just have 2 small tankers of oil, and the rest of their supply has been completely cut off. And then we start talking about health and the spread of disease and stuff like that with trash trucks. So right now, as of the article that I read yesterday, they're currently operating only with 41% of their entire operational trash services. So not only are the fleets not even available, or 41% of the fleets are only available, but then compound that with not even having electricity, you can imagine the amount of, like filth and things like that, to no fault of the people that are living there, but it's just there, and like the disease and sickness and lack of healthcare and things like that that's spreading. And again, this is 11 million people. And so we have to ask ourselves, what's the reason for this? What's going on here? And it really is just more violent imperialism. And Trump said it himself. They might consider taking Cuba, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. You have a whole rich nation with rich history, with very rich in natural resources and things like that, and a whole population of people that has a very rich culture as well. And you have this deranged orange man saying that he's going to just take your island, and giving you guys hell for the past 60 plus years. It's just, I don't know. It's a very unfortunate situation. But yeah, that's the latest on Cuba. And again, this kind of goes into what we talked about on the last episode about the whole plan of taking over the global South, not through joint economic benefit, not through figuring out how we can help you and how you can help us and how we can, invest in your nation and empower your nation. No, instead it's going to be, we're going to literally starve you out, sicken your people out, break down all your infrastructure, just for us to, they're going to inevitably send in, hedge funds, big banks are going to come in there and try to invest. Private companies are going to come in and be like, oh, we'll fix the infrastructure for you as long as we can set up our operations here and profit and, send the money back to United States. So that's that on Cuba. Do you have any other thoughts there?
Well, don't forget those sweet defense contracts that'll also happen. Of course, we're going to have to establish permanent military residence down there, even more so than we have already. But no, it kind of just ties into what I'm going to get into later on, which is another one of my history lessons. I like hopping in the time machine.
Let's do it.
And Trump doesn't have an ounce of originality in his body, so it's like, wonder where he got this idea from. Did some digging and found out James K. Polk, a president whose name rings absolutely zero bells, but it should, because he was a one-term president who expanded the United States by more than over 1 million square miles.
Oh, wow.
So, that's his legacy. We can get into that in a bit, but I think that's where Trump is kind of stealing his swagger from. He's trying to bring manifest destiny into 2026. He wants to make fetch happen. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. This is wild. So yeah, as we transition to the next story, just think about the fact that they're starving these people. 11 million people, they're being starved out, and they're using the protests and they're using all of the issues that these people are facing. Make no mistake, they're using all of this fallout that's happening and saying, look guys, Cuba, it's a failed state. Cuba just doesn't work. They're trying to do socialism. They're trying to do that. And look, socialism just doesn't work. The grid is failing, and it's all their fault, when in reality, the truth is the grid is failing because United States won't let them even buy a single spare part to fix themselves or to repair themselves. And it's economic warfare, plain and simple. That's what it is. It's economic warfare. And unfortunately, it's very successful. It's very successful. So with that, we can go ahead and transition to the story that you have there. So I don't know if you want to start with Iran or with James Polk, but we can get into it where you want to start.
Yeah, so let's get into the James Polk thing. I think that's an excellent segue from the Cuba story, because it kind of ties together again where Trump might have gotten the idea from, because this isn't the first time that he's talked about taking something over, right? He's mentioned making Canada 51st state. He's mentioned Greenland in the past. So seems to be an ongoing pattern with this guy, and I think if we just go down memory lane, I promise it won't be as long as last time. We can kind of get some understanding. So
take your time, Pastor.
To understand James K. Polk, you really have to understand like how he grew up, right? This was like 1795. He grew up in a small county in North Carolina. He was the oldest of 10 kids. It was a farming family, kind of a scrawny kid. He had some, issues, underwent some surgeries as a child. This was 1795, so these surgeries, of course, didn't come with anesthesia. So that's just kind of where things were at the time. Those surgeries left him unable to father children. So for that reason, he didn't have any kids, but he was still a very ambitious guy. Um, so much so that by the time he became, in his late teens, he was studying law at the University of North Carolina. He became a protege of Andrew Jackson, which, talk about a supervillain. He entered into Tennessee politics, served in the U.S. House of Representatives for about 14 years, did 2 years as Speaker of the House, actually, and then he served as governor of Tennessee. That pretty much catapulted his political career and his presence in the Democratic Party, so much so that around 1844, he was pretty much the obvious choice for Democratic nominee. They called him a dark horse candidate because he pretty much came out of nowhere, and some people refer to him as like the first dark horse presidential candidate, meaning that you came out of obscurity and you won. So just think if Bernie Sanders would have won his campaign, that's the type of obscurity he came from.
Got you.
His campaign slogan was very interesting. It was 5440 or fight, which was basically, it was a reference to the longitude and latitude of Oregon at the time. That was a shared territory between Britain and the United States. And he had basically been eyeing expansion into Oregon because there was a journalist named John Sullivan who in 1845 came up with the phrase manifest destiny. And I know you're hearing about that in history class. And I know you remember that line in the song, from sea to shining sea. That's where that idea comes from. It's the idea that God has ordained the United States to expand from one coast to the other coast. And, for all of those indigenous Navajo and Comanche peoples and all of the indigenous Hispanic people that were living down there at the time, just to hell with them. We've got to expand this thing from sea to shining sea. And so James K. Polk fell hard into the manifest destiny camp. So that's the thing. He really believed that it was like the God-given inevitable fate of the United States to expand across the North American continent. And it was pretty much a mainstream view at the time. So it wasn't like this was like a fringe thing. And that's probably part of the reason why he was so popular at the time. There's two things that you need to know about manifest destiny. Like, number one is that's what drove the transformation of the territory of the United States. But also, on a darker note, that was what was also used to displace and destroy like millions of people. We seized a lot of territory from Mexico. We seized a lot of territory from Native Americans. So like those consequences led up to the Civil War. They led to the expansion of slavery. Like it's a very much a question of, was it worth the cost when we look at what we have today? So that's one thing to keep in mind while you're thinking about manifest destiny. And when you hear that phrase come up, is like there was a very dark and bloody toll that it took on American history. So the first thing, he basically expanded in a couple different ways. The first way was with Oregon, and this was probably his most diplomatic way of expanding. So the United States and Britain, they jointly occupied like the country region that was known as like Oregon. So like Oregon, Washington, Idaho, a little bit of Montana, some of Wyoming. Like that's pretty much what was known as like the Oregon country at the time. And also a part of Canada, I believe is British Columbia, was also in the mix. So Americans were going into the region via the Oregon Trail. It's not just a video game. And it was basically like there's a lot of Brits already there. There's a lot of Americans flooding in. who's really got rights to this thing, like who owns what part of the land. And so what James K. Polk did was, again, that slogan 54-40 or fight was in regards to that territory. He demanded the entire territory, like up to the Alaskan border. But he basically ended up negotiating and not wanting to go to war with Britain again. So he negotiated the Oregon Treaty, which was signed in 1846, and basically just set the U.S.-Canada border. Britain kept Vancouver Island. The United States got basically all of the Pacific Northwest. So again, Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. We were able to get all of that in one deal, one treaty, no war. If he would have just stopped there, probably one of the greatest presidents in American history. But again, scrawny kid, grew up in a house with 10 other kids, surgery with no anesthesia. He was just built different, right? So
Built different, had a chip on his shoulder.
A chip on his shoulder. So of course he had to continue with the Manifest Destiny expansion. And of course, you know, the second part of his expansion went just as peaceful as the first part, right? Absolutely not. So it actually ended up with a little thing called the Mexican-American War. We can get into it in just a second, but I kind of want to get your feedback on the Oregon expansion and how you feel about him being able to expand that territory peacefully with Britain at the time, which was like, you know, a superpower, and what that meant for the United States and what it probably would have meant if he would have just stopped at a peaceful expansion of the United States.
Yeah, I mean, so the way that I feel about it is it always can't help but think about what does it mean for the United States to say that they acquired Oregon, and it's always the underlying theme of that is who was displaced, who was killed in order for this land to be quote unquote be within the United States. So that's kind of like where my mind goes, because there, as we know, there were, you know, hundreds of thousands of people that lived all throughout the country and things like that. So whenever we and ourselves in Britain decide who's going to have this land, it's like it's almost like who are we to decide who has this land? So on one hand, it's just it feels grimy to me. On the other hand, I recognize that that's the history of it, and I mean, we say it was peaceful, but was it really peaceful? It might have been peaceful between the United States and Britain, but was it peaceful for the people that previously lived there and that was displaced and moved off and you know and killed and covered up? Probably not so much. So that's what I think about it. I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like Victor's writing the story and telling how this thing happened, and you know, saying like, oh yeah, look what we were able to do. We were able to expand and acquire this land, and it's like at what cost though? So that's where my head goes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And the cost again is something that James Polk did not give a damn about. But especially when it came to the Mexican-American War. So basically the way that Polk acquired what we call now is like California and New Mexico was very messy and very bloody. So basically Texas has declared independence from Mexico 1836. And for about 10 years, they were debating whether or not the United States would annex Texas. So in the meantime, Mexico is not recognizing Texas as an independent nation and consider the annexation basically an act of war. Think kind of China and Taiwan.
Okay.
So basically, you guys decide to go off and become a country. We don't really recognize that. So before Polk was in office, John Tyler was in office. Tyler pushed through the annexation of Mexico in the final days before his presidency. So Mexico was already pissed about that. What was also in dispute at the time was where the border was. Texas said the border between Mexico and Texas was the Rio Grande, which we now know is the border because we won the Mexican-American War. But at the time, Mexico was arguing that it was about 150 miles north on a smaller river called the Nueces River. So Polk ordered a general to march troops into that zone in between the Rio Grande and the Nueces River, basically the disputed zone for where the border is. Mexican troops crossed over into the Rio Grande and clashed with American troops. This happens 1846, just 10 years after Texas declares independence from Mexico. Polk goes to Congress, says something very controversial. He says that Mexicans have shed American blood on American soil. Now, that's questionable. Mexico's not really recognizing where you say this border is.
Right.
So it's technically on the Mexican side, Americans crossed over into Mexico and Mexico responded. On Polk's side, it's no, you guys came on American soil and you killed Americans.
Yep.
Of course, we go to war. The problem is one congressman from Illinois argued that the soil, like basically that area was in question. And he demanded that Polk identify the exact spot where the blood had been shed, and Polk just ignores this congressman from Illinois. Congressman from Illinois, little known guy by the name of Abraham Lincoln. So Abraham Lincoln, notably the only congressman at the time who's given pushback to this whole Mexican-American war.
Wow.
The war lasted 2 years. General Zachary Taylor commanded American forces. They captured Mexico City in 1847. About 13,000 American soldiers died, mostly from diseases, not from combat. Mexican casualties significantly higher. So 1848, to officially end the war, the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, there's another high school history term, was signed. And basically that treaty says the United States is going to give us what today is known as California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, and the rest of Wyoming. And in exchange, the United States paid Mexico millions of dollars, and they also assumed about $3 million in claims that American citizens had against the Mexican government while the territory was in dispute. So to put that in perspective, that adds about 525,000 square miles to the United States and one short 2-year war and one treaty.
Wow.
That is pretty much the legacy of James K. Polk, but I kind of want to bring it back to what we were talking about earlier, because America as we know it right now, where it is, the size, the borders, everything about it, it's not inevitable. It's definitely like a product of choices that are made by people.
Yeah.
James K. Polk made those choices, and it feels current because, again, Trump has publicly expressed interest in acquiring Greenland from Denmark, like taking control of the Panama Canal, making Canada 51st states. Like, and he didn't just say this stuff once. He said it repeatedly, and his administration even made formal remarks regarding Greenland. So like the logic behind it is pretty much the same, right? Like the strategic interest of America, it kind of just outweighs anybody else's claims to their natural lands and their natural resources. And we can kind of see that sentiment echoed in Iran. We see that sentiment echoed in Cuba. We see that sentiment echoed right now with what Marco Rubio is trying to accomplish in the South. And to me, it just seems like Trump is grasping at an ever-fleeting legacy, and he's trying to stake his claim in something permanent, like a land expansion of the United States. And he's just going about it wholly the wrong way. Again, James K. Polk went about it the wrong way, but at least with the Oregon expansion, he showed that things can be done diplomatically. It doesn't seem like we have an interest in doing things diplomatically. We just want to use the military complex that we've built to try and take things by force. So, we lost 13,000 troops in the Mexican-American War to acquire that land. How many troops are we going to lose to acquire Cuba or try to make Canada the 51st state or do any of this other ridiculous things that Trump is claiming that he can do?
100%. I mean, that's the scary part about it is like, it's like, again, at what cost? At what cost is this going to happen? And it's like, we have this, what is it now? 1.5? Is it 2 trillion yet? I don't know what the number is for our military budget. Our budget's larger. The famous quote that everybody loves to throw out is our military budget is larger than the next 9 largest nations' budgets combined. And the reason being is because the value or the benefit of the United States empire is force. It's not the value is not what we produce or export to the world. There's our 2 largest exports are force and military power, and then the financial market. And as we know, the financial market is always hinged on something that's teetering, damn near about to break at any given time, doesn't benefit almost anybody except for a few select, small percentage of the population. And everywhere we go, it's a mission of how we can further one of those 2 things. How can we further our strategic military presence in order to bully someone out of their position, to help out with our financial market and boost up the markets and, drive that shareholder, that sweet shareholder value. That's the name of the game. And yet, to your point, Trump wants to be, right in the thick of it and say, hey, look what I did. Look, I was able to, I'm the president that got Cuba. I'm the president that got Venezuela. I'm the president that whatever. And it's, again, and it's like, who benefits from this? I think I saw something the other day where Trump said with the Iran war and the price of oil going up, he was like, oh, the price of oil going up is great because we are one of the largest exporters of oil. So when the price of the barrels go up, then we get more money. And then you have people, like clapping and applauding that. But it's like, who's the we? I'm not getting any of that damn money. It's like all it is cost me more at the pump. There's a few oil barons and oil execs that get the money and they pump that back into the market or pump that back into taking over somebody's small village somewhere and mining oil. But they say we're not getting any of it. We're not seeing any of it. It's the exact opposite of that.
We at $4 for regular. That's,
right.
that's where we at. That's what we
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's wild. And I think, did you want to close up on that, or did you have another point? Because I think that would be a good transition into the next piece.
No, I think that would be a perfect segue. Kind of wrap that up pretty well there.
Okay, perfect. So yeah, next we'll jump to what's going on with when people start to take their power back, because I think there's so many doom and gloom stories, and I get it because I mean it's a lot of damn doom and gloom going on right now, and it's kind of overwhelming at times to be aware of it. But I think the biggest piece is that the power, it sounds so cliche, but the power is in the people, and certain power structures and capitalist structures, they know that, and nothing can show that more than what's going on right now. So let's pull up Artifact B really quick, because there's a very large like I mentioned earlier, meatpacking strike that's going on. So right now it's almost 4,000 U.S. meatpacking workers that are on strike at a plant run by a Trump donor. And so this is significant for a few reasons. So there's this company, it's called JBS Meatpacking, and it's in Greenlee, Colorado. So it's probably a city that most people have never heard of before. But this JBS company is a significant player in this community. And it's not just a contract dispute. So normally whenever we hear about strikes, it's because people are trying to reach some conclusion with like a contract, or there's some issue going on and they want to come to a better union contract. But it's not just that. This is really like a rebellion against what some people are calling a modern day plantation system, where corporate giants like this JBS are using refugee labor, and they're using political bribery, a la the $5 million that they donated to the Trump campaign, to maintain their profits, and while the workers have to suffer the consequences. And in this case of these workers here at the JBS plant, they literally have to pay, they're paying money to protect themselves. And so let's kind of dive into that a little bit. So what's going on right now is a lot of the workers, they just decided to walk out. Okay, so there's a union there, and 3,800 of these people have agreed. So it's 99%, with a 99% vote. All these workers were like, you know what, damn this company, we're walking out. We're not doing any of the work. And so they're walking out, and it's causing a really big issue. But what are they walking out over? So to understand why this is so significant is because for a long time, for decades, the meatpacking kind of like uh I guess job sector in the nation has pretty much been quiet really since the 1980s, because at one point in time, working at these plants, as many of you may know, working at these plants was a very beneficial job. You had a union protection, they paid well, you could clock in work, you clock out of work, you support your family, and you had a decent life, and you had a pension, and you go on and be able to really have the American dream. Well,
Right.
in the 1980s, private corporations said, well, we can't have that. We need more profits. So what started this is that the very first really big meat strike was in 1985 with Hormel. So it was a strike that happened in Minnesota. It was a little bit over a year long, and it was over not being paid well and wages and people trying to fight back and get some power. And unfortunately, the strike that they had in 1985 was unsuccessful. And so then from that point forward, the union began to get weaker and weaker, and the private companies began to get stronger and stronger by instituting kind of like anti-worker policies. And it's started to reach ahead here with this right here. So a part of the thing that's happening is in 2025, and let me make sure I get my numbers right. Yeah, in 2025, in Q3 alone, this company, JBS North America, had a revenue of $7.2 billion. All right. So they had a revenue of $7.2 billion, but they are refusing to give workers even 2% wage increase year over year. And then not only that, they are having record profits. They're refusing to increase the wages of these workers. Healthcare prices are continuously increasing, as we know, on the entire nation. And then on top of that, to make even matters worse, in order to work at a meatpacking plant, you can imagine there's different safety protocols that you have to have. You need certain PPE, you need certain protective gear and things like that. So workers at this place, they have to, if something happens to any of the gear that you need to perform your job duty, guess what? Repairing of that or replacing of that comes out of your check. So there's wages are being garnished of up to $1,100 from workers' paychecks to use the tools that they need to do the job that they're working at the company. So that would be like you at your company. Let's say you work an IT, or you work in something technical. It makes sense that you need a laptop to do your job. So if your laptop breaks, or if your laptop gets out of date, and they say, yeah, we're going to charge you $2,000 out of your next check to get you a new laptop. And it's just very, very anti-worker. So fortunately, these people have a union. They've gotten together and they're on this strike right now. And it's really crippling the JBS company. But unfortunately, as we know, with these types of things, the companies, of course, can always outlast the workers in terms of the pain that, a single mom, single father, or, just a person that's trying to get by. If I had just had a revenue as a company of $7.2 billion in my last quarter, I'm coasting, I'm cooling. I'm pretty sure I can outlast you on your strike longer than you can outlast me, because you got to eat before I got to eat. And that's unfortunate. And so also, to make matters worse, and I want to get your reaction to this. So not only are they also taking advantage of these refugees, because interestingly enough, the immigrants at this particular meatpacking plant, there's reported that there's 57 different languages that are spoken here. So it's very, very immigrant heavy. People come here and they're wanting to work. We always hear the story about immigrants not wanting to work, or people wanting to come here and take advantage. Listen, we all know that that's BS. These people are coming here, they're working, they're at this plant. Pay people what they're worth. And then I want to get your reaction to this. In January of last year, 2025, this same company, JBS North America, they paid a $4 million settlement over allegations of illegal child labor at this very plant that they are garnering all these profits from. So what's your thoughts on this? How do you see this strike playing out? And this kind of plays into what you were talking about as well, with just the take by any means necessary. But yeah, I want to get your reaction to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. When you were giving your rundown just a minute ago, I looked up a statistic because I wanted to make sure I'm getting this right. So core inflation in Colorado right now, which is all items except food and energy, is at 3.3%. These people aren't getting a 2% year over year raise, which
Right.
means that effectively their dollar is, not going as far as it did the year before. and that one didn't go as far as it did the year before that. So this has been a compounding issue for them on that. They have to provide their own protective equipment. Um, it's it seems like some sort of humanitarian violation. Um, it's insidious that these companies can just allow you to unionize, knowing that they can just wait out the union.
Yep.
And um, either that or contract out other workers, right? Because the job market is such that people need jobs. So you can bring scabs in to work, and then the strike means nothing. You could sustain for years. And I know it has to be a little disheartening when you look up the history of these strikes. It's not like the auto workers union where there's been a history of successful strikes over time. Hormel going a year and not having a successful strike, that had to be heartbreaking to those people at the time. So I imagine all of that's weighing on these workers. It's going to be hard to hold fast in the face of all these challenges, but they're definitely standing up for what's right, and for, I think, just basic humanity at this point, which is outrageous that you have to walk out of your job just to get treated like a human being. But that's where we're at with these corporations.
100%. I mean, I couldn't say it better myself. And it's the other part about this is also in 2025, I'm looking at this stat here. So the price on ground beef, as many of you may know, increased last year by 15%. So companies are making, or specifically this company, JBS, making record profit, $7.2 billion in one quarter alone. Ground beef prices are increasing. So think of it like this. So you're working all day in a freezing, dangerous slaughterhouse for a company that's making record profits. But when you get your check, you get your paycheck, and you realize that now you've taken over $1,000, $1,100 out of your check just to pay for the gloves and the apron that you need to do your job, just so you don't get infected. And then you look up and you're like, well, dang, where's all this money going? I'm busting my butt. I'm working. I'm showing up to work every day. And where's this money going? And then you look up and you see that this company cut a $5 million check literally to the Trump-Vance inauguration in order for, what do you think is going to happen with that? The administration is going to overlook this stuff. They're not going to pay attention to it. If it comes down to litigation and things like that, they're probably going to be less likely to prosecute, and things get covered up. So you take advantage of this immigrant population. You take advantage of people that might not have English as their first language, and they're just coming here hard to work. They got their head down, and it's just so exploitative. So yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. More power to the people. I'm a fan of everybody having a union. I think tech workers should be unionized. I think, of course, nurses and teachers are unionized, and they should continue to express that. But I think the separation that we all have from one another is the downfall, and especially like in certain professional careers, people are very secretive about their salaries or what they're earning and things like that. But when you think about the profits of these companies, and we talked about this in the last episode as well, the profits of the companies that all of these people are working for and working towards, the money is ridiculous. The money is ridiculous. And then you have to say, okay, cool, the company's making money, but what is being done? Where is it going? What's going on? I still have potholes. I still can't have healthcare. Healthcare premiums are going up. Retirement benefits are going away, completely non-existent. We go from pensions to 401ks to now you might get a 401k to go figure it out. have a nice life. So power to the people. Strike if you can. And with that said, I think we can close out with the Iran story and where we're at with that, because the Iran developments as they're happening day after day is pretty crazy. So I'm curious to hear your take and what you've been finding out with Iran.
Not much on the updates in terms of Iran. Kind of shot you a message there on that, but basically, what we have, and I can kind of tee this up for the next time we can get into this, was today Kash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard went before Congress to testify. So as you know, there was recently a resignation within the Trump administration. So Cash Patel and Tulsi Gabbard got called to the mat about that. In that, there was an interesting exchange with Tulsi Gabbard and senators when asked, if she has a nonpartisan role, in which she reiterated that she did have a nonpartisan role, and then she was questioned about her presence in Fulton County with the execution of the search warrant on those ballot boxes and things of that nature. I know that's a story that strikes close to home for you, but so Tulsi Gabbard was there on site. Nobody knows why. That's not within her official job capacity at all. But
I think it's voter and voter intimidation, and they're trying to make a statement. Trying to make a statement to the city officials and to anybody involved in politics of, we're watching, we're here, we can touch you, we can pull up on you and say whatever, do whatever.
She said something very interesting. She said in her reply that the president told her the day of the raid that he wanted her there. So it kind of calls into question, hey, one question ago, you literally just said that you have a nonpartisan role and you don't act with any type of political interest whatsoever. And on the other side of this coin, you're now saying that you went down to oversee a subpoena being, a warrant being executed for a search warrant for voting records in this case. That's, let's face it, against this president in Fulton County, and you're just sitting there with a baseball cap on your cell phone, watching ballot boxes come out and standing in the back of being pictured in the back of FBI vans. So just kind of goes to show you what the administration is up to. Of course, Cash Patel was dodging certain questions. They got softball questions from the Republicans, so you didn't really miss much there. And there's not too much to report on at the moment because I'm sure most of the juicier stuff came out in the closed session hearing.
Oh, 100%.
So, after about an hour and some change, they went into a closed session and the rest was classified to the American people.
Yeah, that's one of the things that always gets me with these hearings. And it's like, one day I want to be able to have somebody really explain to me like how politicians can get away with this. And I'm pretty sure we've all seen the clips that circulate every so often, but they literally sometimes just don't answer the questions that they're being asked. And I don't know how that doesn't just result. I mean, I guess I do know how, because the whole thing is corrupt, but how you don't just immediately get straight to jail. Take your ass to jail, man, because you in here, you're playing in the judge's face, you're playing in everybody else's face. You'll ask them some question, and they just filibuster and completely dodge around the question, don't answer it, completely intentionally misunderstand it and stuff like that. I just don't know how you do that in the court. Because if I go to the court, I'm in Fulton County Court, and the judge says, "What were you doing? I saw you on camera," and I'm just like, "I saw you on camera." They're gonna be like, "Get this man out of here." lock him up. Bailiff, get this man out of here.
The thing about it, especially those tests when they testify before Congress, it's theater. Yeah, and everybody kind of knows and understands that it's theater. If you are, let's just say it's one of Trump's cronies that's getting called to the mat by Congress, the Democrats know that this is going to be clipped. This is going to be posted everywhere. So they're going to try to make the questions look as good as possible. And on the Republican end, too, I mean, Kristi Noem, to her discredit, she did a pretty decent job of this, coming in with the burn book and just firing back at senators who were asking her questions and burning up their time and not really getting to the answer. You're never really held accountable for that. And especially in this administration, you're playing to an audience of one. So as long as the guy in the Oval Office is pleased with your performance, nothing's really going to come of it.
Yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. It's very wild. So yeah, I'm definitely curious to see how the rest of this stuff's going to go. I did have one thing to cover. So I think this is really important. So this is kind of flipping back. It's still a really big topic because there's still issues going on in Gaza and Palestine, and they're still actively being bombed today, by the way. Like there's still bombs and violence going on in Palestine and in Gaza, but with so many different events that keep happening, this is no longer in the news cycle as much. But I want to touch on this story, and then we'll kind of close out after this.
And that's on purpose.
Exactly, 100% on purpose. But I wanted to touch on this because I think we kind of sometimes we tend to think that this stuff is over or it's happening or it's like, hey, it happened and now the Palestinian people are going to just go along and figure out life. But what happens when we look back at the impact of all of this stuff, the impact of 2 and 3 years of consistent bombing and displacement? So this is kind of very wild, what's happened to the reproductive success, or calling it the reproductive genocide in Gaza. So of course, there's already been millions of people displaced within West Bank and within Palestine and within the Gaza Strip. But they've been displaced. They've been moved off. The whole Gaza Strip has basically been leveled. We already know that. Close to, what is it? I don't know, 90,000 people might be killed, and then close to 200,000 people injured and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure the death toll is continuing to rise as we discover things and find things. But in addition to that, there's been a deeper humanitarian crisis of the birth rate. So since compared to 2022, the birth rate in Gaza has dropped almost 50%. So it's dropped a 41% birth rate. And so a couple of harrowing statistics here. The women are 3 times more likely to die during childbirth and 3 times more likely to miscarry than they were before all this conflict stuff happened. And then they've also found out that the UN Commission found that Israeli forces deliberately rendered non-functional maternity wards all across Gaza. So they would go to hospitals and deliberately target the maternity wards because, for what reason? This is a cultural genocide. They're trying to make sure that these people not only don't live there anymore, but they can't even have any more children anymore. They want the people off the map. I mean, when you think about how, like, we're saying these words, but when you really think about the impact of that, the meaning of that, it's sick. Like, it's sickening. It's mind-boggling that this can even be a thing, and that we do this. But anyway, also there's been reports of medical torture. So there's reports of documented C-sections that have to be performed without anesthesia, and the use of mobile phone flashlights for the surgery due to the total power blockade that has taken place here. So you have hospitals bombed and destroyed. You have total power blockade. You have birth rates that have significantly dropped, and you have the pregnant women that are there getting C-section without anesthesia under cell phone flashlights. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't stop there. There's also been the intentional destruction of embryos. So the destruction of 5,000 embryos at the Basma clinic eliminated the reproductive specimens of thousands of families. So when you look at not only the initial destruction of the bombings, but then you look at the fallout, these people have been displaced. They have nowhere else to go to. All of their hospital infrastructure has been destroyed. They're dying from sicknesses and things like that. Their reproductive possibilities have decreased by 41% over the course of 2 years. And this is really what we're witnessing, is the erasure of a culture, of a population, of a people. And it's very intentional. All of this stuff is intentional. And so the amount of hospitals that they have that are non-functional is 94%. 94% of their hospitals don't function. And also the health workers that have been killed. So you have all these people that have gone to study health and they want to, help out their people. 1,700 of their health workers, doctors, nurses, anesthesiologists, and things like that have also been killed in the conflict. So I just wanted to touch back on that because, again, we hear stories about like what happened with James Polk. We see the immediate of what's going on with Cuba and, the humanitarian crisis there. And it's like, oh, damn, they don't got electricity. That's tough. Or like, oh, damn, Venezuela, they're struggling. That's tough. Or like, damn, we bombing Iran. That's tough. And it is tough. But then there's so much more fallout that happens. It's not just the initial, news cycle stuff of what's going on. So that's why these conflicts and these, Trump making statements like, I might just take Cuba, or I might just take Greenland, or do whatever. And even Polk going and be like, oh, I was able to peacefully get Oregon. It's like there's so many layers, and there's so much more stuff that's going on after the fact. And the true impact that this is having on real people that I think can't be kind of like overstated. And I think sometimes even myself, it's easy to not really truly let that sink in of like what's really going on. So don't forget all these things that are happening and the impact. And when we hear somebody like Trump say, I might just take Cuba, or when we hear uh, another bomb dropped on an Iranian school, think about the real fallout and the generational trauma that's coming of that. So
Yeah.
that's my last piece to leave us with.
No, that was very important. I appreciate that. It's really important to remember the human element and the human cost in all of this. I mean, and you think about, um just the issues that's creating. You mentioned the C-sections happening by mobile phone light. Like,
Oof.
I've, just from the nature of my career, I've been in plenty of operating rooms. I know you've seen your way inside of an operating room or two. Uh, Even with the current advances in technology, LEDs and all that, those lights are huge in there, and that's because they need to see everything down to a single speck of dust. So
Exactly.
your potential for infections and deaths postpartum for the mother and the child, that's increased significantly for things like that. And even to, somewhat of a lesser degree in Cuba, um, you have to think of the toll that this takes and the brand that America is projecting on the world and the types of enemies that we are inevitably creating. If you are a young disenfranchised man right now in Cuba and you have no power and your trash isn't running, so your trash in the streets is piling up,
Oh
you
yeah.
have no job, there's a risk of infection going up. And even if you catch an infection, if you go to the hospital, you can't receive the treatment that you deserve because that's
Hmm.
been affected. I mean, and then you look 90 miles to your north and people are living it up
Right, on jet
in
skis.
Key West, Florida on jet skis. And you know what I'm saying? So you have to think about the message and the marketing that we're projecting out into the world and what that's going to mean
Mhm.
for our children and their children down the line. Like, we are not setting ourselves up for success when it
Oh
comes
yeah.
to having a good presence on the world stage, having any sort of influence. Forget America and imperialism. That's done. Us as like the forefront of the world and the premier superpower, that's over and done with. Those days are dead. But just us having a good working relationship with our neighbors in the region and abroad, it's, that's what's hanging in the balance right now. That's what we really have to work to salvage.
Yeah, 100%, 100%, man. It's like, yeah, just creating enemies left and right. Um, so that's gonna close us out for the episode of today. Again, we will be streaming every first and third Wednesday of the month, 8 p.m. What do you think about some of the stories that we covered today? Leave any opinions, thoughts in the comments. What do you think about Trump's comments on taking Cuba? And what do you think about some stories that you think haven't been covered? Something that you want us to look into, provide context on, provide our input on? Drop it in the comments below, whichever platform you're watching this on.
If you
And
want to
we
hear more
will,
about James K. Polk's 9 brothers and sisters, put it
hey,
in, put it in the comments.
put it in the comments if you want to see what basketball team they got going on. 10 kids is actually, that's actually kind of crazy. But anyway, see you next time.
Next time.